Good day, everyone. I'm Omari Graham, member of the Education and Outreach team here at the UWI Seismic Research Center. And we are back again with another installment of our SRC Chats Quarantine Edition video series. With me today, I'm delighted to have our director, Pat Joseph, and alongside her, we have our Education and Outreach manager, my boss, Miss Stacey Edwards. So welcome to SRC Chats, ladies.
Thank you, Omari.
Nice to be here, Omari.
Great. So today we're gonna, just have a little chat, see how you've been doing, what is work like. So how have you been doing?
Let's go first.
Do you want the truth or do you want the answer for
Truth always, truth always.
I think overall, I've been doing all right, just trying to adjust to this new normal and just trying to figure out how to continue working from home and still have your children be productive and keep your sanity at the same time and not put on too much weight and do everything that the internet says that you should and should not be doing,
But?
Pretty much the same here, balancing, responsibilities at home. Homeschooling a primary school aged child, and of course managing the business of SRC. So it has been, I think that for me it's been longer days, believe it or not.
Longer days, okay.
Yes, because it's definitely been, but it's been longer days. I tend to start my work after I'm completed with Reagan, my daughter Reagan's work. So that means I extend into the evening with SRC stuff.
Oh, I hear you. So both of you all mentioned having to balance your responsibilities related to your family and those of work. So after what, like 7 weeks, I think it is, because we had to work from home from early. Do you have any tips for any of the moms, especially out there, having to balance, dog, kids?
Run away.
Give us some hacks.
I think structure, you just have to try to be as structured as you can, because otherwise when things start overlapping, you can really just begin to lose your mind. So you really have to just put everybody into a bit of a routine, nothing too rigid, but yourself as well. Make sure you have your goals and your routine. Make sure that you're taking care of children or whatever, however old they are, because mine are teenagers, that they have some kind of routine to follow so that you don't feel like you're just continuously outing fires. Because it can be very unsettling in this time and everything feels like the world is upside down. But if you have some kind of routine that you try that kind of guides you, I think it helps to keep things a little bit stable.
I see. Pat?
Yes, I agree with Stacey that finding a routine that works for you and your family is a good way to kind of start organizing things, and it helps make things a bit easier. It doesn't always work, but at least it helps.
At least you have it there.
Yes.
It's on the fridge.
All right, so if you don't mind, could each of you probably describe what your normal responsibilities would be at the center and tell us a bit about the most difficult thing to replicate at home and the easiest thing to get done at home now that you're not at the office?
I didn't know this was mine.
I need to start taking notes.
All right. So what I do at the center, my job really is to kind of ensure that the outreach section is functioning as it should. And then the outreach section is essentially the bridge between the scientists and the public. So ensuring that we make sense of the science, right? So that involves, and I have a team, including you, Omari, of 3 people that I work with. So it's 4 of us together. So that involves, communication and talking and brainstorming and ideas and trying to stick to deadlines. So bringing that to home now has been a little bit of a challenge, because I find that, as Pat says, you have these longer days and you have into one. So the home has now become everything. And put also to add to that, all of the restaurants are closed, right? So you literally, everything happens at home. So your office, your schooling, the feeding, the nurturing, everything happens at home. And so having to now, but you don't have the same opportunities to interact with people casually as you usually would. You see them in the hallway, you see them in the coffee room and bounce off ideas. So I think that has become a little bit more of a challenge, but ironically, I do find in some senses, because in my section, we have a meeting every week, which we did not have when I was at SRC. So you're actually, in a sense, a bit more connected than you were before. So it's a little bit, so I guess to me, that whole creative process is a little harder to replicate at home because you just don't have that human interaction all of the time.
What?
So for me, it's similar. My job at SRC actually has changed in the last 3 months because I changed from a research fellow volcanologist to director in November of 2019.
Baptism by fire.
Yes, and then of course we're now at this situation. So what was part of the regular, well, the monitoring staff, because we call the change, shift from scientific to administration. So my areas of responsibility, which it still includes because I do both now, my main area of responsibility was monitoring gas and waters from hydrothermal systems at volcanoes. So I would have to go to the island, sample for gas and waters, bring it back, have them analyzed, and then interpret the data. And then, of course, at SRC, the way we function, as you know, is we all help in different aspects of our operation. So, for instance, I would help sometimes with education and outreach, with other administrative things. So now, shifting more to the admin side, it has been an adjustment because now my day would be to make sure that from an administrative perspective, all of the parts of our operations keep going. And I support that. So whatever monitoring, based on our monitoring side, everything we have for seismic and volcanic monitoring that we kind of cover. For education and outreach there, whatever support you and your team, need, there.
Provide that.
Correct. And then administrative, remember we're responsible to the university as well. So they have protocols and policies in place that we actually have to follow in order to allow us to do the job we do. So learning about those, procedures, which I would not have known before, to some degree, it took about, for the last few months, it's been a lot of learning and learning by doing. So now we're in a COVID situation, like Stacey. In order to keep our operations going, we have weekly meetings with the heads of the different, segments of our operation to make sure that even though we are working remotely, and by working remotely, that doesn't mean to say that we don't go into the office, because occasionally we still do go to the office because there are things that we need to deal with.
Right.
In person. But we are not there as often. Correct. So, but it does mean that we meet often, and that's once a week, with all the I don't want to say department heads, but area, possible operations, to make sure that things are still running as smoothly as possible. And if there are any challenges, that we bring it up, immediately or near immediately, so that we can deal with it, and that we know that we are supported by a team, and that problems that come up, you don't deal with by yourself. You can ask for advice and support from your other team members. So that's essentially where we are.
Cool. So the topical thing now is COVID and coronavirus. A lot has been said about female leadership during coronavirus. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, the German Chancellor. As women, what do you all make of female leadership on a whole? What are the challenges? Just tell us, what do you make of it? What do you think of it? Is it the same? Do you not see any difference? What do you think women bring to the table?
That's Stacey, go first.
Stacey, you've been directed.
I know, right? I think that question can go on for a very long time in answering that question. But I think women in general, women bring a lot of very positive things to the table in terms of leadership in general, because obviously not all women are the same, right? But I do think in general, in my experience, women tend to be a little bit more detailed oriented. So, which can be a plus as well as a minus. But I think that helps to ensure that you kind of drill things down and think things through in terms of the ramifications of this and that and whatnot. So I think definitely that helps a bit in leadership and getting your team to see things that that others may not necessarily see. And of course, the played out one, or the one that you hear over and over, although I do not believe in multitasking, I think women in general tend to be a bit better, or can be in general a bit better at managing different activities at the same time, because a lot of the times women will be some kind of primary caregiver at home, whether it's children or to elderly parents or whatever, and they also have to have jobs. And so I think that because of that, the skill of being able to manage various things and not become too overwhelmed by that, I think women kind of have that a bit, as well as empathy in general, not everyone. In general. But I just think in my experience, that's what I see, one of the things that I see women bring to the table. Yeah. Like, there are other things that could be said about male leadership and where we are in the world today, but I won't get into that.
What?
So, as Stacey mentioned, I recently saw the interview, and I'm sure many people did, with Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. And I found it was such an excellent interview. The way she handled the questions and her response and her consideration of, the Caribbean as a whole and not just Barbados. And I think that kind of also, with respect to women, I don't want to say we see the bigger picture, but we can take things not just in isolation. You probably consider the effects of one thing on the other and try to come up with a solution that can probably satisfy a number of different problems. Yes, connected, yes. So in many ways I try to do that, given the situation, that we're in, because we are dealing with the management of an organization, but we're also dealing with people, and as Stacey mentioned, everybody has a different personality and also a different way of doing things, but we all work together with one goal, which is to provide a service to the islands that we're responsible for monitoring, and to not just provide that service, but to provide an excellent service. So we need to to consider all of these things. And I think in terms of women in leadership, it may be definitely, I see the caring thing that Prime Minister Mottley, spoke about. And I think that factors into a lot of the decisions we make and how we think about, our thought processes in addressing problems.
All right. So I definitely agree that you all are two excellent women in leadership. And I think that's a great place to leave it for this episode of SRC Chats Quarantine Edition. So we want to thank Dr. Pat Joseph and Stacey Edwards for being with us today on SRC Chats. And as we continue to stay at home, as we continue to work from home, we encourage you to do your part to keep others safe so that we could get back to normal as quickly as possible. So thanks again for watching, and do have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Amari.
Thank you.